All right, so today we're going to talk about getting started in FCS Express Flow Cytometry. And what we're going to do is we are going to build a layout from scratch. We're going to insert plots, statistics, we're going to do some batch processing, and then we're also going to build a spreadsheet and do some graphs out for that as well. So during the process, we're going to cover a lot of information. If you have any questions after the fact, during the fact, please feel free to reach out to us at support@denovosoftware.com. All right, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with a blank layout. And if you've never opened up the software before, if you've never played around in it before, you can see we look suspiciously similar to Microsoft PowerPoint. And that's by design because we wanted the software to be something familiar to you. So up here at the top of the software, we have a ribbon where we're going to be able to insert, format, do all kinds of things to the objects that we're going to generate within our Flow Cytometry layout. So if I come over here under the Design tab in the ribbon, you can see that I've changed the orientation of my page. I personally like to work in a landscape. You can work in a landscape or a portrait. You can come in and adjust page size and margins. And we also have some of those prefab layouts that you're used to working with in Microsoft PowerPoint as well. So if you like to work with that workflow, you can go ahead and use those prefabs. We're actually just going to go ahead and start from scratch. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the Insert tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to just select one of my 2D plots to insert. I'm going to choose a color dot plot to start out with, but you can see all the different plot types that we have to offer. They're organized into 1D plots, 2D plots, we have our charts, and then we have some other plots available as well. This is going to be part of a webinar series, so we're going to go over new plots, new functionality in much more detail in further webinars. So if you're interested in those capabilities, please feel free to register for those webinars. I'm going to select a color dot plot, and then I'm going to go ahead and hold down my mouse to insert it into the layout. And when I release my mouse, I'm going to go ahead and be prompted to choose a data file that I would like to go ahead and insert. Okay, and so I'm just going to choose this first data file. This is going to be part of a data set where I'm looking at 9 total data files. I'm just going to insert the very first one to begin with, and I'm going to click Open File. All right, so now you can see I have this flow plot created within my layout. I can come on here, I can click on the axis with my left mouse, and I can adjust the parameter of my axis. So I'm going to generate a forward side scatter plot to begin with, as well as adjusting the parameters from the drop-down menu. You can also use our search toolbar. So you can see I can put my cursor in this and I can actually start typing. And as I'm typing, it's populating the search. So that's really useful if you have a lot of parameters in your data set and you want to quickly find those parameters. It's just a search toolbar feature. One of the cool new features in version 7 is that if you want to flip your axes, there's going to be a shortcut for that. So I can just Control-Shift-F, and I will actually go ahead and switch my axis here. So you can see now I switched my forward and side scatter from my X to my Y. And if I want to go back, I can just do it again. All right, so that's kind of a cool, fun shortcut that's new in version 7. All right, so once I have this initial plot created, I'm going to come up here to my gating tab in the ribbon, and this is where all of the different types of gates that are available in the FCS Express are going to be housed. So the first 4 are going to be the traditional gates that you're going to use on 2D plots. We're going to have an elliptical gate, rectangular, polygon, which just means that each time you click, it's going to create a vertice, so you can create unique shapes if you would like. And then the freeform gate is going to be a gate where you hold down your mouse button and you draw the shape that you want to. The well gate is going to be useful on heat maps or spade trees if you're doing any transformation works. And then we also have the marker and the quadrants available. Okay, so I'm going to start with an elliptical gate, and I'm just going to place that here around my lymphocyte population. And after I release my mouse, it generates the Create New Gate window. And this is where I can define the gate properties for this specific gate. I can give it a name, so I'll go ahead and change it to my lymphscape. I can change the gate color from this window as well if I would like to. I can decide if I want to include these events or exclude them. I can emphasize on plots, which just means that the dot size within that specific gate is going to be much larger than the relative dot size, and we'll explore that downstream when we're looking at a smaller population of cells. And then we also have this option where we can always create a data-specific gate when moving this gate. And what that means is that not always are we going to have a global gate that's going to be applied to our data set. So FCS Express functions that when we generate a gate, it's a global gate that's consistent across all of our samples. We allow you to create data-specific gates on individual samples. You can also create data-specific gate groups that allow you to have different specimen types that have the same gating strategy, same gate placements, and all that kind of stuff. We'll also explore that in more detail downstream as well, but that's an option when you're creating a gate. So to create the gate, I'm just going to click OK. And you can see what happens is I get this gate text box that has the name of my gate, and it also has the percentage found within the gate. The color is also reflective of that because I inserted a color dot plot. If I move this gate around, you can see that the color updates in real time as well as the percentage of the gated population. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that gate there. And so now I want to pull out subpopulations from my lymphocyte population. So I want a flow cytometry plot that's going to be based off of those lymphocytes. In order to do that, I can just grab my lymphocyte gate and I can drag and drop it into an open space in the layout. And what happens is I get a plot that's based off of that lymphocyte gate, right? So now I can just come in and I can left click on the axis and I can adjust the parameters as needed to focus on the subpopulations of cells. If I need another plot based off of the lymphocyte gate, I can drag and drop the lymphocyte gate again, or I can use the window shortcuts. So if I want to, I can just Control-C, Control-V this plot, so copy and paste. And then I can come in and adjust the axis as needed. So there's a few options to get you where you need to go. All right, but now I have these 3 plots across my layout, but let's say that you're a little bit OCD like me, you want everything aligned properly, you want the spacing to all be even, okay? So what we can do is we can come in here and we can select all of our plots. We can go up into the Home tab in the ribbon. And because we're designed to look suspiciously like Microsoft PowerPoint, we have a lot of the features and functionalities that you're used to seeing in Microsoft PowerPoint. So we have all of the align and arrange functionality that you're used to using in PowerPoint. So you can bring objects to the front, you can send them to the back. In this case, I can align these objects. So I'm just going to align the tops of these objects. And then I can also elect to distribute them horizontally, which just means the spacing is going to be the same between all of the objects. So it's really useful. It's going to be really quick and easy to go ahead and create these templates so that everything is nicely aligned and arranged. Okay, so moving forward, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the CD8 population and the CD4 population. Downstream, we're actually going to use those 2 populations and we're going to use a spreadsheet to calculate a ratio and then we'll chart that. So that's kind of the workflow that we're going to be looking at, okay? So if I go up here into the gating tab in the ribbon, you can see I'm going to just grab a rectangular gate. I'm just going to draw it onto my plot. And again, my create gate window appears. I'm going to name this my CD8 positive population. And you can see because this plot was created from the lymphocyte gate, it automatically defaults the parent gate to be the lymphocytes here. So if you ever wanted to change that while you're creating the gate, you can obviously change it from this drop-down menu here. But if it's set the way that you want to, you can just leave it the same. I'm going to create a different gate color here for my CD8 positive population, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to move my gate text box just so I can see it. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing here for the CD4 population. So grab a rectangular gate, grab it onto my CD4. But in this case, I'm actually going to name it Gate 1 because I want to show you how we can edit gate names after they're already created. So I'll click OK. All right, so now you can see I have these 2 populations. You can see the colors associated with these populations are being backgated on all of the other dot plots within the software. So that's kind of cool. And you can see if you move them around, you'll see the colors update across all of the backgated plots. All right, so now let's say we want to adjust the name of this gate. So rather than having it in Gate 1, let's say we want to name it CD4 positive. I'm going to go up here into the Insert tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to insert a gate view. And this is going to be our gating hierarchy. So this is going to show us the parent-child grandchild relationship between all of the gates that we're setting up within our layout, right? So if I come in here and I expand the lymphocyte gate, you can see that it has the CD8 gate and the gate 1 based off of it. So the cool part about these gating hierarchies or these gate views in FCS Express is that in a lot of other softwares, you just get a picture of what's going on. And if you need to change the parent-child relationship, you have to delete your gates, you have to go back and re-add them, making sure that you select the gate before you add it. In FCS Express, these are going to be interactive gate views. So for instance, if I wanted to take gate 1 and I did not want it to be a child of the lymphocytes anymore, I can just select it and drag and drop it outside of the lymphocytes. And when I do that, you can see that it's no longer a child of the lymphocytes. It's on the same level as the lymphocytes. And if I want to go back and add it as a child again, I can just drag and drop it on top of the lymphocytes again. All right, so these are going to be interactive. So if we create gates and we get the wrong parent-child relationship, we don't have to worry about it. We can always edit it after the fact. Now, if we want to edit that gate name, all I have to do is I have to double-click on a gate within the gate view, and you can see the edit gate window appears. And so this is where I can come in and I can adjust the name. If I want to adjust the color, I have the option to do that. And we have a bunch of different options here. We can go into more detail with those one-on-one. I will mention Alt-click though. That just means you have to hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and click on the gate in order to move it. It's kind of a nice thing to use if you have somebody who's very click heavy that you're sharing your template with. The one thing I will mention is if you click that, remember that you clicked it, because you won't be able to move gates either unless you press your Alt and you hold it down at the same time. Okay, so once you have this set up, let's say that we want to add a quadrant over here. Okay, so I'm going to go back up into the gating tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to select a quadrant, and I'm just going to click it onto my plot. All right, so the default behavior of these quadrants is that it's just going to be a standard quadrant, meaning that when you insert a quadrant onto a plot, it just has that center vertice. You can move the center line up and down, and you can move it left and right. Okay, but within FCS Express, we have different quadrant options. We have what's called a floating quadrant, and we also have percentile quadrants. So if I want to change the quadrant type on this plot, I can select the plot and right-click Format, and it's actually going to open up my formatting window. Now, if you're used to previous versions of FCS Express, this new formatting window is going to be something new to you. So this is going to be more similar to the formatting windows that you're used to seeing in PowerPoint, where you can have them open, but you can still do work within your layout, okay? So the formatting window is also a dockable window. So if I grab my formatting window, I can come in here and I can resize it to any size that I want. I can move it around the screen. If I have other monitors, I can go ahead and place it on a different monitor if I would like. And then if I want it docked, you can see that when I grab it, I get this icon in the center of the screen. And if I hover over each one of these points, it allows me to go ahead and dock it / lock it in that point, right? So if I release my mouse now, I have it docked over here on my right-hand side of the screen. Now the behavior is that it's always going to be visible because it's automatically pinned. If you want it to auto hide, you can just come here and uncheck this pin, and it's going to auto hide when you go away from it, right? So if I were to come back, now it would display itself again. So these are going to be personal preferences. You can adjust them as needed depending on what you prefer, but this is how the formatting window is going to work, right? So now if I want to format any object, since I have my formatting window already set up within my layout, I can just simply click on a plot, and my formatting window now is going to allow me to format any aspect of this plot that I want. So let's say I want to come over here and I want to format those quadrants like we were talking about, right? Because the standard quadrant doesn't necessarily fit the data in the way that I want it to. So you can see here under the quadrant options, we have all of our different types from a drop-down menu. As I mentioned, we have our floating, which is what we're going to explore. And then we also have percentile quadrants as well. I'm going to insert a floating quadrant. You can change the line color. I'll just up the line thickness to show you. This is going to be a real-time update of what I'm doing. Over here in the format window, it's going to update in real time here on the screen. All right, so now you can see I have my thicker lines here on my quadrant, and if I select my quadrant, you can see that each endpoint now has a vertice, and I have that center vertice as well. So now I can make them into these shapes that fit the data a little bit better than maybe just those standard quads do, right? Because maybe flow data isn't always going to be as linear as a standard quadrant is. So this allows us to make them into unique shapes that are going to fit better with our data set. All right. So from this point, let's say that I want to insert a CD3 histogram, right? And since I'm looking at only all of the lymphocytes here, let's say I just want to focus on the CD3 negative lymphocytes on this plot, just to drill it down a little bit better, just to allow me to pick out those subpopulations a little bit better. What I can do is I can take this lymphocyte gate and I can drag and drop it out to create a plot that's going to be based on that gate. But now I have a color dot plot, right? Because when I drag and drop the lymphocyte gate, what I get is I get a child plot, but it has the characteristics of the parent plot. So if I want to change this to a histogram, I don't have to recreate it from scratch. In FCS Express, we can change plot types after they're already created. I'm going to simply select this plot. I'm going to go up to the Format tab in the ribbon. And on the right-hand side, you can see you can change the plot type. And I can just change it to a histogram. Now you can change it to any plot type that you want. This is going to be really useful if you like to work with contour or density plots. And let's say that you're trying to pick out a rare population that maybe isn't necessarily being reflected well with the density or the contour plot. You can switch to a different plot type where you can pull out that subpopulation a little bit better. So these change plot types are going to be really useful to drill down what you want about your data. All right, so I'm going to change this to a histogram. And you can see then it changes me to count versus whatever I want on my x-axis. I'm going to change this to be that CD3 that I've been talking about, right? So now I have a CD3 histogram. After it's created, if I want to adjust any properties related to this histogram, I can just select it. And from my formatting window, I can adjust the overlays. And this is where I'll be able to adjust the smoothing. So let's say I want to have this not be as jagged. Let's say I want to increase the smoothing a little bit. We can see what 10 looks like. Let's maybe increase it a little bit more to 15. Maybe that fits us a little bit better. Maybe we want to change the color of it to reflect the red of the lymphocyte gate. I can come down here and change the color of the line. And then I can also fill it. I can adjust the fill style and I can adjust the transparency. So this is where you're going to have full formatting capabilities of these overlays that you're creating on your histograms, okay? You'll be able to adjust any properties you want related to the histogram from your format window, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on this CD3 negative population. We want to see what's going on with these markers within that CD3 negative population. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the gating tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to insert a marker onto this histogram. Okay, so now you can see I have a marker. It gives me the percentage, but I don't have anything showing up in my gate view. Oops, created an additional marker, sorry. So the reason why we don't have anything created in the gate view as far as a gate is because in FCS Express, we want the user to have the flexibility to just create as many markers as they want and get stats on them. Now, if you want to create that as a gate, you can always convert a marker to a gate, but the default behavior is to not create a marker into a gate, right? So we want a gate based on this. We don't want to just generate a percentage from this. We actually want to take this marker and we want to apply it to a downstream plot. So in order to convert this marker to a gate, I'm simply going to right click on a plot. I'm going to convert the marker to a gate. And then I'm going to select convert and link. All right. And what happens when I do that is that my create new gate window appears, right? And I'm given the opportunity to come in and give this gate a name and a color. And when I click OK, you can see now that gate is added into my gate view. The gate color is now updated on my plots, right? And now I have the ability to take that population, that CD3 negative population, and apply it to this plot. So there's a few ways that we can go ahead and apply gates to plots. If I select a plot and I'm in the gating tab in the ribbon, you can see I have a current gate. And from the drop-down menu, you can focus and you can look at any current gate and you can apply it from this. So if I want to say, let's say I want to look at my CD4 positive, I can go ahead and do that. And now you can see I'm only looking at my CD4 positive over here. The other thing that I can do is if I have a gate view created, I can simply drag and drop a gate from the gate view on top of a plot. All right, so now you can see I'm looking at that CD3 positive or CD3 negative population on this plot. Okay. So there's a few ways. You can also just drag and drop gates. You can drag and drop from the gate view, or you can go from the current gate window. All right. So once we have all of this drilled down, looking at the CD3 negatives kind of allows us to pull out the populations a little bit better over here. So now let's say we want to focus only on the CD19 positive population. So that's going to be the combination of these two quadrants together. And so again, FCS Express doesn't automatically create gates based on quadrants for you. And the reason is because in softwares that do that, you generally get 4 different gates, Q1 through Q4. Sometimes you have to add the statistics together for a certain quadrant. Sometimes you don't want all 4 quadrants. Sometimes you only want the upper half, the lower half, the right or the left. So in FCS Express, we give you the option to go ahead and adjust the quadrants and create gates based on quadrants of any combination of those quadrants. So if you right click on a plot, it's going to be similar to the process of converting a marker to a gate. We're going to convert quads to gates, and we're just going to choose the right quadrant, and I'm going to convert and link it. And over here, it creates my Create New Gate window. I'm going to call it my CD19 positives, give it a different color. And this is the one I'm going to emphasize on plots. This is going to be the rarest event population that we're going to be looking at today. So I'll just show you this feature on this subpopulation of cells, and I'll show you how we can explore it, how we can turn it on and off, okay? So if I check it when I create the gate, when I click OK, you can see what happens is the dot size of the dots that are included into that quadrant are much larger than all of the remaining dots in our layout. So the reason why that's helpful is, let's say that we're looking at a population of cells that's 0.5% of the total population. It's really going to allow us to pick out each one of those individual cells on all of our previous plots and see where they're showing up. Are they going to be high for other specific markers? Are they going to be lower expression? So on and so forth. And you can see as I adjust this quadrant and the gate that includes, we can really pick out cell by cell where those are showing up on all of the plots previously. Okay, so it's kind of a cool feature to use. It's going to be more useful. This is not necessarily the best example to show you guys. It's going to be more useful the rare event populations you're using. It's also really useful if you're doing any index sorting data analysis. Okay, so if I come in over here under my CD3 negative, you can see that's where my CD19 positive gate is, because it's going to be a child of the CD3 negative. I can just come in here and I can double click on the CD19 positive gate, and I can just turn off that emphasize on plots and click OK, and it's going to go back to a regular dot size. So these are things that you don't necessarily have to have turned on all the time. You can function back and forth, and you can swap between regular dot size and emphasize dot depending on what you need. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to talk about statistics for this specific data file, and then we're going to move on into how do we analyze data for all of our data files, right? Because currently what I'm doing is I'm building a layout based on one data file. Now, how do I apply that to all of the other data files in this data set? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this plot that has my CD4, CD8. I'm going to go to my statistics, and I'm going to grab my gate statistics. And this is going to be a default stats window for this plot. Once we have this created over here on our format window, we can come over here and we can adjust which statistics are going to be displayed, the number of decimals that are going to be displayed per each statistic. So let's say we wanted to get rid of file name and overlay, but let's say we wanted to add in the X median. We can go ahead and do that from this window, but you can also change the gates that are displayed in this. So because I created this off my CD4, CD8 plot, let's say I only want statistics related to my CD4 and my CD8, so I can just check those two boxes, and now I have all of the stats that I want related to my CD4 and my CD8. Okay, so this is a default stats window. These are going to be really, really good if you just need stats really quickly. But let's say that we want to dive into some keywords. Let's say we want to grab a combination of keywords and statistics from multiple different plots, and we want it all organized into one table. So that's what I'm going to show you how to build. I'm just going to quickly delete this just to give us some room. I'm going to go into the Insert tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to grab a text box here. Okay, so once I have a text box created, I can right click within that text box, go to the table, and I can insert a table. And within the table, I can define how many columns and how many rows. Let's just choose 4 columns and 2 rows. And this is going to then insert a table with 4 columns and 2 rows. And within this table, we can come in and we can define anything that we want to add. So I'm going to choose a few keywords. So the keywords are what the user annotated on the instrument, or they're going to be built in as part of the data file to begin with. So something like the date is going to be automatically generated for you depending on the date of acquisition of your data files, whereas the sample ID is a user annotated keyword. So that means the user is typing on the instrument what the sample ID is. FCS Express can then grab that keyword once it's out of the instrument. All right, so we're going to add in a column for the date of acquisition. And then we're also going to do a statistic for the number of CD4 positive events instead of the percentage. And let's say then we also want to know the median fluorescence intensity of that CD3 negative. So median of the CD3 negative. All right, so to add statistics to this table, it's just going to be a few drag and drops. So the sample ID, as I've mentioned, is a keyword. So I can choose any plot that I want and drag and drop it into this table. I'm going to grab a keyword token and I'm going to click OK. And then it's going to pop up my Create Keyword box. So if you don't know the keyword shortcuts, you can come over here and select this ellipsis. And this is going to bring up a menu that has all of the keywords that are going to be built into your FCS file. So if you've never looked at your FCS file keywords before, I highly encourage you to drop in here and just see what is built into your data files. But you can see there's all different kinds of keywords. In this specific instrument manufacturer, they have a keyword known as sample ID. So that's what I'm going to choose. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. And you can see it adds the sample ID then directly into the table. The cool part about this is that it has this grayed out background. So anything with that grayed out background in FCS Express is what we call a token. So it means that that value is going to change if the data file associated with that value changes. So that's kind of a cool and unique feature. I'm going to also add the date of acquisition. I'm going to take us right back to that keyword token. And it's just going to be $date. All right, and so you can see these are very old files from 2008. All right, so the next one will be the number of events for your CD4. Again, I'm going to drag and drop that gate into the table. And when I release it, this is going to give us a different view of what we've seen when adding the keywords. This is going to give us the opportunity to add any statistics that we want related to the CD4. So you can see over here on the right-hand side, these are all of the different statistics available. If I just want the number of events, I can click on that and then I can click OK. And you can see it adds the number of events for my CD4 gate. And then again, let's say that I want to add the median for this marker. I can just drag and drop this into the table. And it's going to prompt me, rather than having a gate selection, it has the marker selection, and I'm just going to choose median and click OK. All right, so now I have this table built, and this table is going to be something that's going to follow my data, okay? So we took the time, we built this layout based on this one data file, but as I showed you when I was loading in the data, we have 8 additional data files. So how do we apply this same logic to those 8 data files? And that's where the data list comes into play. So if I come up here into the data tab in the ribbon, I can actually come in and grab our data list. And this data list is going to house all the data that I can now apply within this layout. And so the default behavior of the software is, if you load in one data file, FCS Express will actually load in all of the additional data files into the data list from the same source folder. So all of these data files are in the same folder. And so when I loaded in one of them into a plot, FCS Express automatically loaded the rest of those data files in that source folder into the data list. Now, if you have data in multiple places, you can come and press this blue plus sign, and you can add data file, and then you can just navigate to anywhere on your computer and add the remaining data files in. All right, so if you have multiple different dates that you're trying to analyze data from and they're stored in different files, this is how you, or different folders, this is how you can go ahead and add them into your data list. All right, but the data list is going to be one of those dockable windows similar to our format window, something I can move around my screen. If I close it, I can reopen it. I can dock it over here under my format window if I want to. So now it's kind of a window within a window if I want to do it that way. If I don't want it, I can just drag and drop it back out. But the cool part about the data list is that you can see I have all of my different files, and then each file is associated with an iteration number. So if I want to load in data file number 9, all I have to do is click on this blue iteration number down here, and you can see that everything associated in the layout changes and updates to that new data file. You can see my table updated and all of the statistics in my table updated, and you can see that all of my plots updated as well. So I can just easily come in and click whatever number I want to load in that data. Okay, there are a few other ways that you can do it as well. If you're within your data tab in the ribbon, you can see these double arrows. That allows you to scroll through the data list, and you'll see that teal background. That shows which data is loaded on the screen. All right, so now I'm looking at data number 7, but I can easily scroll this way if I want to. I also have the option that from this iteration drop-down menu, I can select which iteration I want to load in. So now I'm looking at iteration 2, now I'm looking at iteration 7, so on and so forth. So there's a few different ways that you can cycle through your data here. Now, the way that we talked about the software default functionality is that we applied all of these gates, and so these are all going to be global gates, right? So sample 1, the position of that lymphocyte gate, is the same as sample 4. Now, sample 4 is a sample that was run, and it looks pretty problematic, right? There's something off about this sample compared to the other samples. So let's say I want to adjust that lymphocyte gate just for this specific sample, and I don't want it to change on any of the other samples because that global gate looked pretty good. What I can do is I can just select the gate, and I can hold down my shift key. And as I move the gate and hold down the shift key, I can adjust it as much as I want. Now, if I go back to any other data file, oops, sorry. All right, let me hold down my shift key. And now if I go to any data file, you can see that all of the data files have that same global gate, and sample number 4 has that one altered gate, okay? There's a cool way that we can visualize it now. So within the gate view, we can actually view which gate has the data specific gate on it. So if you select the gate view and you come over here under the gate view options, it gives you the option to show data specific gates. This is something new in version 7, but it's kind of cool because now we can have our gate view open, and you can see under the lymphocyte gate, if I expand this data specific gate, it lets me know which data file has a data specific gate on the lymphocyte gate. All right, so it allows me to come in and do this. Now let's say that I want this data specific gate. Let's say that this is a different tissue type, and for some reason, or a different cell line, and for some reason the forward side scatter lymphocyte gate the global gate doesn't work on samples 4, 5, and 6. And we want this same large gate for 4, 5, and 6. What you can do is you can select samples 5 and 6. Okay. And I can just drag and drop them on top of data file 4 over here for the data specific gates. And when I release it, it creates a group. Okay, so now if I load in data 5, data 6, those have that same gate. Data 7 goes back to that global gate. Okay, so what I can do if I want to as well, this is a cool new feature in version 7, I can rename this group. So let's say this was a different cell line 2. Okay, so now I can have these data specific gate groups and I can name the data specific gate groups. So naming the data specific gate groups is a new feature, but it's going to be really cool. It's really going to allow you guys to keep track of what you're doing and how you're naming these gates and the organization of that. All right, so now if you want to delete a data specific gate, what you can do is you can come over here. Let's say we want to remove data file 6 from this. I can just select it and hit the delete key on my keyboard and it removes it. Or if I want to get rid of the overall whole data specific gate, I can just come over here, the group entirely. I can delete that and it's going to go back to the global gate. So now if I load in sample 5, 4, 6, you can see that they all have that global gate. Okay, so that's kind of how we're going to function in the software, building these layouts, using the data specific gate groups to make sure that we're gating each one of the data files properly as needed. So now what we can do is we can send all of these results for all of the data files out of FCS Express. So let's say the whole point of running this was to present it at lab meeting, and I need to have a PowerPoint presentation of my layout to send to lab meeting. So that's what we do when we talk about a batch processing in FCS Express. If I go over here to the batch tab in the ribbon, and I open up my batch actions window, these are all of the things that we can do in FCS Express. We can have the software automatically generate for us on however many data files we have in the data list. So in this example, we have 9 data files. Let's say we want to put 9 data files into a PowerPoint. We're going to set it up. We're going to hit run. The software is automatically going to send it to PowerPoint for us. If we had 900, if we had 9,000, it would function in the same exact way. We wouldn't have to go file, save as, file, copy, paste. We wouldn't have to function that way anymore. Everything is automatically going to be done for you in this batch actions window. The great part about the batch actions as well is when you set them up one time, they're going to be part of that layout. So you'll be able to reuse these over and over again. So when you create a layout and you set up batch actions, every time you run that assay, you load in a new data set, you make gate adjustments, and your batch actions are already saved for you. Okay, so the first one we're going to set up, we're going to do an example of 3 of them, but you can see all the different options here. We're going to set up a PowerPoint, a PDF, and then we're also going to do an export into Excel. If you have any questions about any of the other types of batch actions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can see we can save pictures, we can send a print, we can save your layout. But I think going over these 3 basics will get you at least started to the point where you'll be able to start building your layouts using these. Okay. So I'm going to come here to the Save PowerPoint. And what it's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to make any settings I want for this export into PowerPoint. And so the great part about this is if you like your PowerPoint format is a certain way, so you like 1 slide per sample, you can format 1 batch export to PowerPoint like that. Whereas if your PI likes multiple samples on the same slide, you can set up an additional batch process for that. So you can have more than 1 export out to PowerPoint. They can have different formatting options. So that's kind of cool. We're going to stick with the default, which is 1 page in FCS Express equals 1 slide in PowerPoint. If you want to do it like a tiling option, you just need to tell the software how many columns, how many rows, all that kind of stuff, and it'll grid it out for you. Okay, so as far as the page range goes, we're just going to focus on this page that I'm on right now. We don't need to export out the welcome page or the summary page, so I'm going to click current page. But again, these are going to be something that you can customize. We're going to combine them all into the same presentation. We're going to explore this option when we create a PDF, but the way that this output is going to work is that we're going to generate one PowerPoint presentation that's going to have all of our 9 data files in it, 9 different slides. Okay. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to adjust the output file options of this. And so this is where the software gets really cool. We can do some conditional stuff here, and we can have the file name path set up based on keywords in our data file so that we're not having to manually come in and name these every single time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this folder. And I'm just going to start on my desktop, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this my PowerPoint results. Okay. So right now, if I run this assay, what I'll get is I'll get a PowerPoint results with all of my samples in it on my desktop. Now, the next time I run it, it would overwrite the initial one, which is not what I want. I want every time I run it, I want it to generate a new PowerPoint based on that day's data. So what I can do is I can press the T over here, which stands for token. Okay. And I can grab a keyword from the data file. So for this one, I'm going to use that date keyword. So right now, what I can do is I can set it up so that the software is automatically going to generate a folder on my desktop based on the date of acquisition of the data files. And then it's going to place a PowerPoint with my results in that folder and name it PowerPoint results. So now every time I run this assay, what's going to happen is I'm going to get a new folder on my desktop based on the date of acquisition, and it's going to place the results within that folder. Before I click OK, I just need to tell the software that if the output folder does not exist, so if that date folder doesn't exist on my desktop, I want you to create it. And then I'll click OK. All right, so now I have this batch action set up. If I close my batch actions window and I come back, it's still going to be there. So these are going to live with your layouts, okay? If for any reason you don't want to run your export to PowerPoint that day, you can simply uncheck the process. So I never recommend completely deleting it because then you have to start from scratch. If you just don't need to process it that day, you can just uncheck that action. Okay, so next one we'll set up is going to be the save to PDF. It's going to function the same way. We can do the current page again. And then just the same process. So I'm going to put it on my desktop. I'm going to name it PDF export and click save. I'm going to add in that date keyword that we did so it places it in that same file folder. All right, so right now, if I were to click OK, what would happen is that I would get a folder on my desktop and I would get one PDF. It would be called PDF export, but it would only have results for sample 9. And that's because the way that the PDF default is set up is that each output is going to be saved separately. That means that each file is going to be its own PDF. So at the end of this, I would have 9 separate PDFs. If you want to combine them all into the same file, you can, similar to our PowerPoint. I'm going to do it individually just to show you the differences here. But what I'm going to do to differentiate the file names is I'm actually going to add a keyword into this pathway based on the individual files. So we're going to focus on that sample ID from the data file. So again, grab the T, come in here for the keyword, click insert. And under the keyword tab, I'm going to type in the sample ID. Again, if you don't know the shortcut, you can come in and press your ellipsis, and that will bring up all of your keywords. Click OK. And so now what it's going to do, I'll put a space here, is it's going to, on my desktop, place or create it into this date folder. And then within that date folder, it's going to name it based on the sample ID PDF export. Okay, so these are where we can get really conditional with this stuff so that we don't have to manually come in every time and type a file name for these things. The software is automatically going to generate our file names for us. It's going to save us a lot of time in the long run. So I'm going to click OK. And then the final one we're going to do is just an export to Excel. We have two different modes. We have column mode, which is what we're going to do today. That's going to be each column is going to be a different statistic. Each row is going to be a different sample. Or we have the cell mode where you can use an Excel template that you already have set up. You can tell the software which statistic gets exported into which cell specifically. So two different options available. I'll do the column mode. And here where it says save to new file, we're just going to follow the same procedure that we've been doing. I'm going to name it my Excel batch results. Okay. And then I'm going to insert that date. So now it will create an Excel batch process with the date for me. So right now, if I were to hit run for my batch processes, I would get the PowerPoint the way that I want, the PDF the way that I want, and I would get an Excel spreadsheet, but it wouldn't have any information in it. So what you actually have to do is you have to tell the software which statistics you want to export out. And so this is where we can just drag and drop like we've done when we built the table in order to add statistics and in order to build up an Excel spreadsheet. So if I want this entire table, I can just drag and drop it, and you can see that as I'm hovering over Excel column mode, I get this black plus sign. And when I release my mouse, it adds all of those tokens that were in my table directly into an Excel batch export. So that's one way to do it really quickly. Let's say I want to know things related to my CD4 gate. I can drag and drop my CD4 gate on top of that. And then it's going to prompt me to choose which related to my CD4 I want to go ahead and export. So let's say that I want to know a bunch of different things. Let's say I want to know the percent of all cells. Let's say I want to know the X median of this. Let's say I want to know, we already have the number of events from somewhere else. So let's just say we want to know the number of gated cells. Click OK, and it's going to add all three of those statistics directly to the Excel. So we would just build this Excel spreadsheet, grabbing, dragging, and dropping whatever objects we wanted statistics related to. So again, I can select my lymphocytes from here. I can select the number of events. Let's say I want to know the percent and of all cells. And if you have multiple gates that you want the exact same statistics from, you can actually select as many gates over here as you want and then select the statistics. It would just be, you know, if I had my lymphocyte gate and I didn't necessarily want all of the information for the additional gates that I'm selecting, we can't pick and choose which stat goes with which gate. So if I do this, I'm going to get all three of these stats for all three of these gates. Let me choose a gate that I haven't selected yet. Okay, so now when I click OK, you can see it adds all of those stats directly to that Excel batch export. Okay, so again, if I close this window and I reopen it, it's still there. It's going to be part of this layout now moving forward. So what I can do is if I'm ready to get results for all of my samples, I just need to make sure that whichever data file I want to start with is loaded on the screen at the time that I hit run. So the way that the batch processing works is it starts at whatever data file is loaded on the screen and it goes until the end of the data list. We don't do a loop. So if, for instance, I had data file 9 loaded in and I hit run, what would happen is I would get all of these actions, but only processing sample 9. So you just want to make sure that you have the sample you want to start out at first loaded on the screen at the time that you hit run. This is useful if you have controls. You can have your controls in your data list, but you can just start the batch process after your controls if you don't want to batch them out. Just make sure whichever data file you want to start with is loaded on the screen. And now I can hit run. And what it does is you can see it's going through the 3 actions for all 9 of the files. So you can see it's loading in the data and it's processing it out. So this would work 9 data files, 900 data files, 9,000 data files, as many data files as you need results out for. go ahead and process them in the software. Go grab a coffee while it's doing it if you have a ton of data that you need batch processed out. But what you're going to see, it's going to open up my Excel batch export because I had that to automatically open after I exported. So you can see in my Excel batch export, it has all of the information that I set up in the batch process. We can come in here now, we can edit this, we can create calculations, we can do whatever we want in Excel now that we're out of FCS Express if we need to do anything in Excel. The other thing is that it generated a folder onto my desktop with all of my information. Let me just find that folder for us. All right, so here is the folder. You can see that within this folder, I had done a previous batch export, so I have some duplicates of the PDFs, but if I go ahead and I open up this drug 1 PDF export, which is the one we set up, you can see that I get a PDF that's just that one page. If I come down here for my PowerPoint results, you can see that what I'm going to get is I'm going to get that PowerPoint, and it's going to have what I have set up on my layout exported out to PowerPoint. I think I accidentally hit the grid on that one, so I'll show you what happens when you don't hit the grid. This is what you would get if you didn't set up your PowerPoint to do a grid, so 1 page per slide. And each one of these is going to be an individual object, so I can come in here and I can move it around the screen. Once it's in PowerPoint, I can actually ungroup these objects if I want to, so I can come in and I can move the distribution out if I wanted to. I can adjust axes. I can do everything. If I forgot to do it within FCS Express, I can come in and I can do it within PowerPoint after it's exported out. Okay, so that's how we would handle exporting out data from the software. And again, this is going to save as part of the layout. But let's say that we want to use the software and we want to use the spreadsheet functionality within the software to build a spreadsheet and then maybe graph from there, all within FCS Express. So that's what we can do when we're talking about the integrated spreadsheet functionality. So I'm going to come over here on page 2. And I'm going to build a spreadsheet from scratch. So I'm going to come up into the Insert tab in the ribbon, and you can see under the Spreadsheet option, there's an option for New, and it just prompts me to go ahead and insert a name related to that spreadsheet. So whatever name I name my spreadsheet is going to be carried over into any charts that I create based on that spreadsheet. So I always like to skip a step and name my spreadsheet properly. It's okay if you don't. You can always format the titles of your charts after the fact, but just be aware that whatever we type in here will automatically be grabbed on those charts. So we're going to build a CD4-CD8 ratio. Okay, and then we're going to use that ratio and we're going to create a bar chart based on that ratio across all the samples. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in my sample ID because I want an identifier. I'm going to know which sample is contributing to which bar. So to add sample ID, which is a keyword from all these data files, I'm just going to select all of them in my data list and I'm going to drag and drop them into the spreadsheet. Okay, and when I release my mouse button, oops. All right, so when I release my mouse button, I'm going to go ahead and select the keyword token option. And again, that sample ID we've been working with. And then the one thing about the spreadsheet that we need to remember is under this data source tab. So what the software likes to do is it likes to go ahead and scroll through the data when we click on this blue iteration number, right? We saw that in everything we created on the first page. All of the graphs, the statistics table, if we click on that blue number, it updates to reflect whichever data file we want to load into the software. Well, in the spreadsheet, what we're doing is we're actually loading all of the data at once, okay? So there's nowhere for it to cycle to. We kind of want the spreadsheet to be a snapshot. So whatever data we're loading in there, we want it to freeze that data. And so By unchecking this box, what it does is it's telling the software, don't cycle through this data. I want you to keep this data consistent. I don't want you to try and change data files. So when I click OK, it loads in all of the data associated with the spreadsheet and all of the different data files, but it still allows me to scroll through the data files on the previous page or on all the plots or objects that I want to scroll through. Okay? So then if I want to go ahead and add a statistic to the spreadsheet, I can just come back into my data list, grab all of my data files again, drag and drop them. And rather than choosing that keyword identifier this time, I'm going to choose the statistic. So this is a window that's going to be a little bit different than version 6. So the cool part about this is that we can choose multiple gates and multiple statistics to add to the spreadsheet at once. So previously in version 6, this was a multiple drag and drop situation. You would have had to select statistics related to gate CD4 and drop them in, and then you'd have to go back and add the statistics related to CD8. Now in version 7, we just have to select both the gates at this point, and then whichever statistic or statistics we want to. So if I wanted to add multiple statistics, I can. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple and clean with the percent parent, which is what we're going to use when we're talking about the ratio. But you can come in here and you can add as many statistics with as many gates with one drag and drop. So that's going to be really cool. It's going to speed up the process that you're doing now. So I'm just going to come back here to the data source tab again, uncheck this box, and click OK. And when I do that, it's going to go ahead and generate my CD4 and my CD8 percentages, right, across all the data files. So then for the ratio column, that's just going to be a calculated parameter. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type my formula, CD4 divided by CD8, click enter. And then what I can do is I can actually drag it down to apply that formula all the way down. Okay. So now you can see when I click within this new spreadsheet that I have some options available in the ribbon that weren't there before. If I click away, they disappear. So this is where we can come in under the layout tab. We have the ability to adjust all the fonts. We can create borders. We can wrap text. We can merge cells. We can work with conditional formatting, and I'll show you that in just a few seconds. And then we can also come in here and we have all these built-in formulas. So what you're used to doing in Excel, the formulas here are going to be available to you in FCS Express. And there's also going to be a few flow-specific formulas available to you here that aren't going to be available to you in Excel. For instance, this stain index formula. So if you're doing antibody titrations, you have this formula readily available. All right. So if I want to apply some conditional formatting into the ratio, if I just come back here under my layout tab, I can grab the conditional formatting and I can go ahead and add data bars if I want. So this is going to be really cool because what it does is it gives you a visual representation of what's going on in the data, right? So now I can really quickly look at it and I can see, oh, drug 9 has the highest ratio. So useful for 9 samples, super useful if you have 900 samples, right? You'll be able to really easily visually pick out what's going on. So really quickly, because I know we don't have much time, I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to insert a bar chart. And then we're going to format that bar chart, and then I'm going to let you go, all right? So back up into the Insert tab in the ribbon, grab a bar chart, and I'm just going to insert it into the layout. So you can see what it does. When I first insert this bar chart into the layout, it defaults column A and column B, but I have column headers, right? So I want those column headers to actually be my axis labels. So if you click on your spreadsheet and your formatting window is open, you can go to the Spreadsheets Data tab of your formatting window. And all we have to do is check this box to use the values in the first row as labels, and it's going to update my spreadsheet, okay? So then once I have it set up, I can just left click on the axis and it's going to give me all my parameters of my spreadsheet. So it's going to function identically to what we're used to seeing now in a flow plot, right? I can just select my ratio parameter and now you can see I have my sample ID versus my ratio. If I want to come in here and adjust anything related to these bars, I can come over under the overlay section. I can adjust the bar color if I want to. I can adjust the bar shape if I want to do that. And then if I look at my 2 pages side by side, so if I look at my view tab and I do 2 pages vertical, and I just look at my page 1 that has that gate on there, what I can actually do is I can show you that when I move this lymphocyte gate, everything else is going to update. So move my gate, you can see the spreadsheet's updating, the bar chart's updating, and the ratio, calculated parameter, all the conditional formatting, everything's updating in real time. So this is where the software is really going to take off for you guys doing any of your statistical analysis. You'll be able to do everything in this spreadsheet, and then you'll be able to get live updating results when you move your gates and stuff around. It becomes really, really powerful at that point. So under the Insert tab, we're not just limited to the bar chart. We have pie, we have scatter with regression. We just don't have enough time today to go into all of those different features available. But I hope this is enough to help you guys get started in the software. Let me just go to the summary page. So if you guys haven't already, you can go to our website. You can download a demo for 30 days. It's going to be a fully functional version of the software. You're going to be able to do everything that I showed you today and so much more. If during that 30 days you need any support whatsoever, we have a support module now available in our website that you can go and submit a support ticket. If you want to as well, you can always just reach us at support@denovosoftware.com. We are here to help you guys get you started in the software. As I mentioned previously, there's another webinar series coming up, so please feel free to contact us and reach out to us if you have any questions or you need any help.